Vikings 27, Seattle 24. Welcome to another post game with me. I am Michael Rand from the Star Tribune. Unbelievable game. I feel like I say that every week, but the Vikings keep topping themselves. They keep going one step further than I thought they could. I thought this game was destined to be a frustrating loss, right? Like they were up 17-7 late in the first half, had a really bad kind of sequence. They gave up the ball. Seattle comes down and scores 17-14 halftime. I feel like that's going to be pivotal in the game. Seattle comes back again. It's 24-20 with like 4.5 minutes left. Seattle's crowd has got great energy. The Vikings look like they're stacked up, backed up, and then they get it done again. Sam Darnold gets pulled down by the face mask. This time they call it, by the way, unlike the play against the Rams earlier this year. But I digress. Gets pulled down by the face mask, hurts his ankle on the same play. Very next play, steps up in the pocket, hits Justin Jefferson down the field, touchdown. Defense does just enough on the next possession to force a missed field goal. Darnold makes an underrated play on the next possession, right, where they try to run it twice, and then instead of throwing it away when they try to go 3rd and 7 play action, they're not fooled. He just takes the sack. He runs the clock. He takes the sack. Seattle's out of timeout. So Seattle's going to get the ball back with a minute left. That speeds them up. They get a penalty to start. And then Geno Smith finally makes another fatal mistake, throws an interception, 2 picks on the day. 27-24 is your final. How they got there, I don't know. It seemed like I said, it seemed like a playoff game, and it might as well have been a playoff game because this game was absolutely critical for the Vikings if they want to have any sort of postseason seeding, right? Like, we already knew going into this game that Detroit had won, which is not surprising. They were playing the Bears. Philadelphia, though, had lost in dramatic fashion. Last second touchdown by Washington beats Philadelphia, and Philadelphia loses Jalen Hurts to a concussion in that game. Huge developments in the NFC. So we already knew going in that if the Vikings won this game, not only would they be even with Detroit, both of those teams would be one game up on Philadelphia. What that means is this. If the Vikings win out, there's no more tiebreaker mumbo-jumbo to worry about. If they win out, they will be the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's just pure math. It's pure simple math. If they win out, they will be the number 1 seed in the NFC. That confers upon them the only bye, gives them home field throughout the playoffs. They would need to win 2 home playoff games at that point to go to the Super Bowl. That is a huge difference between being the 5 seed or the 6 seed and having to probably go on the road for 3 playoff games as a wild card. So they are still very much in that mix. They know if they win out, they will be in that scenario. Now, it was tenuous, though. I was starting to play the scenarios in my head. What if they drop to the 5? Could they potentially fall to the 6? Because if they lose to the Packers next week, those teams would be tied in the race. I don't know where they would be tiebreaker wise, but if you look at it, there's a big difference, right? There's a huge difference. So huge things at stake. Seattle had tons to play for. They knew they had to keep pace with the Rams in the NFC West. This was a huge game. Geno Smith comes back after bailing out of that Packers game last week. Packers ran all over Howell, their bad backup quarterback. Green Bay had an easy time of it last week. So, but this was a huge test for the Vikings. This was the best team they've played in a long time. And one thing that's kind of gone understated, I think, during this Vikings now 8-game winning streak is that the first 7 were not really against the best competition, right? They ran through the AFC South. They got to play the Bears twice. The Cardinals were a better team, and the Vikings needed every last second to beat the Cardinals in that game. That was a dicey game. The Falcons, yeah, they're a playoff contender. By the way, Michael Penix Jr. looked decent today. Anybody looks decent against the Giants, though. Atlanta wins in the first game of the Kirk Cousins benching. And that game was close, too. It was 21-21 going into the fourth quarter. Like, Atlanta's a decent team, but they have not played a team this good on the road since their last loss to the Rams in their 7th game of the year. So they have not played great competition up to this point, not played great quarterbacks up to this point, certainly, during that stretch. This was different, though. Geno Smith's not the world's greatest quarterback, but he is a pretty good quarterback, a mobile quarterback, a guy who can beat them with a quick passing game, which they did a lot today. So this was a test. This was in Seattle. Seattle had a lot to play for. they passed that test in a way that was nerve-wracking and satisfying, right? Like nerve-wracking because you honestly didn't know which way that was going to break, right? Like they're down 4 with 5 minutes left. Darnold throws one kind of into traffic when he gets hit. That could have been picked. That could have been, that could have gone the other way. That could have been the game. Instead, it falls incomplete. They get a first down after that. They get the touchdown. Next thing you know, they're up 27-24. Next thing you know, they're doing another one of their patented celebrations in the end zone after Theo Jackson interception, by the way, stepping in for Harrison Smith. Next thing you know, they're 13-2, tied with the Lions, 1 game up on the Eagles. Sam Darnold. I'm starting to have feelings about next year and not wanting to see this team without Sam Darnold. I know J.J. McCarthy is the guy, but man, he just keeps making tough play after tough play. 22 out of 35, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns, passer rating of 112.3, took a ton of hits, kept going, 5 carries, 11 yards, a couple kneel downs at the end. Otherwise, some big timely runs to get a few yards here and there. Aaron Jones, a pretty good game, but mostly it was Darnold. This was a Darnold game. Justin Jefferson, huge game, 10 for 44, 2 touchdowns. They're able to kind of overcome some of their own mistakes and frankly overcome a good opponent. Like this wasn't all their own self-inflicted mistakes. Like I tweeted at the end of the first half, 2 big Jordan Addison kind of missteps cost them in that first half. The first one being on that second possession of the game, Addison drops a third down pass. You convert there, maybe you keep that drive going. Could be 14-0 early. Instead, Seattle gets momentum back. They come back and score. It starts to be a back and forth game. Then at 17-7, they can't convert a 3rd and 10 towards the end of the first half. Addison maybe cuts his route a little short. It's an 8-yard gain instead of a 10-yard gain. They have to punt it away. Seattle comes all the way down, scores a touchdown, changes the complexion of the game. So they made some of their own mistakes. They had some untimely penalties, some costly penalties. Also, though, Seattle's a pretty good team that played pretty well. So the fact that they were able to win on the road in a hostile environment in not the ideal conditions against a good team playing a good game with its crowd behind them, knowing they have to have it, that tells me something about this team. And I think it told all of you guys a little something about this team too. So let's get to some of your comments. Lord Grizzly says, victory not as satisfying without Pete Carroll on the opposing sideline. Yeah, they didn't have a lot of victories against the Pete Carroll Seahawks, though. I remember this was not a team that they have done well against. This is not a trip that has tended to go well for the Vikings. I still remember it was 3-4 years ago. They had the 4th down play on the goal line. Alexander Mattison gets stuffed. Russell Wilson comes back, wins the game against them. You might remember the playoff game at now Huntington Bank, previously TCF Bank Stadium. I think there was a game a long time ago where someone for the Seahawks ran for 5 or 6 touchdowns. I'm blanking on the name. It was one of their really good running backs, but things against the Seahawks, particularly in Seattle, have not tended to go well for them. So, TD Gray says, I love how this team reacts to pressure. Agree with that. How can you not agree with that? They've been in the moment a lot this season, and they have risen to the occasion in a lot of those moments. Not every time, not always exactly how the way you would want it to, but today they did. Today they did, and most of the time this season they have done it. Most of the time this season they have done it. So that is a good sign for right now. That is a good sign for January football. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect along the way. Doesn't guarantee them anything, but they showed me something today. I think they showed Amy something to do. She said, seriously, a gritty, tough win that said a lot about this team. They have what it takes. And again, yes, I think they do. I'm starting to kind of sense this belief growing, especially when Detroit lost last week. You could see the 1 seed floating out there. You could see the division title flowing out there. Now Philadelphia loses this week. Now it's a matter of, hey, you win 2 more games, you're the 1 seed. Now, that is going to be easier said than done because all you have to do now is win 2 games against probably 2 of the 5 best teams. I think NFC North can make a case that it has 3 of the 5 best teams in the NFL, at least 3 of the best 7 in the NFL. And I think against for some advanced metrics, I think they have 3 of the best 5. Green Bay is a really good team. They're playing very well right now. They're gonna have something to play for in this game. They're gonna want to try to gain ground on the Vikings, kind of keep momentum going, keep Minnesota from winning the division, whatever their motivation is. They're not going to win the division. They're 2 games down on Detroit and Minnesota. with 2 games to play. I think they're probably officially eliminated because one of those teams will be, even in the case of a tie, one of those teams would finish ahead of the Packers. So they're out of that race, but they've still got something to play for here. They've still got a lot on the line, and they want to prove themselves. They are a team that thinks they can do big things this year too. And of course, the finale at Detroit, if the Vikings manage to make it past the Packers, or if the Vikings slip up against the Packers, but then Detroit still loses to San Francisco next week, you would still have a possibility. You cannot, though, go into that Detroit game down a game and still win the tiebreaker. I think Detroit has all the tiebreaker possibilities that could come with that. I think it would be a division record thing at that point. So you got to win next week to give yourself every opportunity to win in Detroit. Detroit's defense is decimated. Yeah, they beat the Bears today. They had to pull out some garbage. Hey, we pretended to fumble play to beat the Bears. Good for them. They're a really good team now too, but they're banged up. They'll do weird stuff. They'll do self-inflicted stuff. They're going to feel the pressure at some point. So it's right there in front of them. It is right there in front of them, but they do have a lot to do still. Let's do a little bit more of this. Rochelle, my colleague Rochelle, does the cat trade make sense to you? Rochelle, it does. It still does. I don't think it's worked out great. I am definitely on record saying it has not worked out great, but it certainly makes sense to me because Karl Anthony Towns cannot be your second best player on a championship team. But this is a Vikings podcast, not a cat podcast. Chris Lindy says, best music break, Prince, The Replacements, or Husker Du? Got to go with Prince. I like The Replacements, but I've never been like, they were like 5, I'm like 5 years too young probably to be a huge Replacements guy. Of course, obviously, I've been reading a lot of the cool covers this week. The passing of Slim Dunlap, obviously that's a big deal. So glad to see them represented. Husker Du, I like Husker Du too, but Prince is the guy. Prince is definitely the guy. So that I will allow right there as well.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Let's get to a few other questions before we dip out of here. T-Gage, Tom Murphy, my old neighbor, says, should Van Ginkel get any DPOY, Defensive Player of the Year attention? 10-plus sacks, 2 pick sixes. You can't argue with his impact in that fourth quarter. I mean, the pass rush wasn't there most of the day. They had no sacks going into the fourth quarter. Then Van Ginkel gets one to force a punt by Seattle, gets another one on the drive that forces them to try that really long field goal. He has 2 sacks. I think he's going to get some attention. I don't think he's going to win it, but I think he deserves to get some attention with the stats he's putting up. And I think that if his name was anything else, if he had more of a reputation, he would be taken more seriously. But I don't think he's going to win that award. I think he should get attention, though. So good question to that and a good way to get into the pass rush. Little concerned about the defense. They gave up some yards. They're vulnerable on some things. Stephon Gilmore got beat by DK Metcalf on a touchdown. Got another couple flags in this game in his first game back from a hamstring, but good to have him back if you're the Vikings, stabilizing things a little bit. Byron Murphy had a good game, I thought. Then, of course, Theo Jackson with the game-clinching interception. Brett says, with Jettas, anything is possible. I mean, man, he was great in this game. I already said 10 for 144, 2 touchdowns, including the game winner. Yeah, I mean, whenever he's out there, you've got probably the best player on the field in the game, not just at his position, best player, period. And that's a nice feeling to have. So, if I'm the Vikings, like, this has just been kind of gradually growing, right? Like, it went from like, nice little story. They won their first game. Oh man, they might be pretty good. They're 3-0. Okay, they're 5-0. Okay, yeah, now they lost their 2 games. When's it going to fall apart? They haven't lost since. Okay, they haven't lost since. They are 13-2. 13-2. They have an opportunity, if they win their last 2 games, to be 15-2, win the NFC North, and claim home field advantage throughout the playoffs and get a first-round bye. I mean, they have shattered even the most optimistic expectations for this season, and frankly, most of them were pessimistic. So you're kind of in this place where, like, it feels like they're playing with house money, but now it's also starting to feel real. It's starting to feel like maybe this could be a season where it's not just cute. They're a much better team than they were in 2022 when they went 13-4. Much better team than that. I don't think they're the best team in football. I don't even think they're the best team in the division probably, but they can win this division. They absolutely can win this division. And if they win the division, that probably means, unless something weird has happened along the way, if they win the division by winning these last 2 games, that means they will have a clear path, 2 home game wins to be in the Super Bowl. That is what they're talking about right now. That is what is in front of them right now. So, can they get there? I don't know. Doubt them at your own peril, I guess, is what I would end with. Doubt them at your own peril at this point. I've doubted them at some points this season. I've been thinking it's going to fall apart. I've been thinking they're not going to make the stop they need. They did that today. I've been thinking, hey, maybe this is where they run out of gas. Maybe they're just meant to be a wild card team. And then Sam Darnold scrambles away and hits Justin Jefferson, and next thing you know, they're ahead. Next thing you know, they win another game. So doubt them at your own peril, I guess, is the point at this point. Huge one next week against Green Bay. We could be taking some time off this week, but we'll certainly get to that next week. Royce and I will talk about everything again tomorrow, get his perspectives on this. And then, of course, Week 18 setting up to be an ultimate showdown against the Lions. Thank you guys for joining me here. Appreciate all the questions. We'll talk to you again soon.